thank you very much to EJ, because he's always the host for our Coffee with God. And EJ and I do Coffee with God. We collaborate Coffee with God, and EJ has a Mystic Matters that he also invites people to join and listen to some interesting things in his Mystic Matters Zoom meetings. And thank you very much, Stephen and Sue, for responding to Larry today. And without further ado, Larry needs no introduction. Over to Larry. Thanks, Larry.
Greetings, everyone, from Mossel Bay, and I hope you are all well. And thank you for joining this Coffee with God. But I have a confession to make. I never drink coffee after 12 noon. So I'm having tea with God this afternoon, and actually it's green tea. Now, this book has quite an interesting genesis. It's called A Life and a Prayer. It focuses, no, it doesn't. A Life and a Prayer, an anthology of prayers and those who composed them. And how this book evolved was over the years, traveling around the country, giving missions. I would often, in my mission program for the evening, use a prayer composed by someone. And then many of the time that people afterwards greeting me would say, "Oh, who composed that prayer?" Or, "Please, could I have a copy of that prayer?" And so it became quite popular. And then people would say, "Well, who was that person?" Whether it was Etty Hillesum or whether it was Christian Jescherge, who was that person that composed that prayer? And so gradually it evolved that I collected these prayers and then a little brief bio of the person who composed them or composed it. And so eventually I put it all together in this booklet of only 56 pages. And the idea is that the prayers that people compose tell perhaps more about them than their life story themselves, because this is coming from the heart. This is coming from a very deep place. So I happened to leave a copy in my room at the monastery in Bergvliet, Cape Town. And every year for the last several years, Desmond Tutu has been making his retreat at the Redemptorist Monastery in Cape Town. And he would always use my room because it was the provincial's room and not always occupied. It was just there when the provincial is there. So he would always be given that room, which had a little office attached and its own bathroom and a little kitchenette. So it was ideal for a retreatant. And he picked up the copy of this book, and sometime later, I received this letter from him, handwritten in a scrawl. You can see his age here. Archbishop Emeritus Desmond M. Tutu, my dear father, please forgive my awful deleteriousness in thanking you for your splendid book. It has been a beautiful companion, and now he moves into the royal plural, for such as ourselves, struggling to open ourselves to the divine coming so utterly freely and utterly graciously. That year he was very ill, and I imagine that the final coming was on his mind. Well, he's still with us. I have liked being exposed to these stalwarts of our faith who have been outstanding persons of prayer. Thank you once again, and apologies for a disgraceful delay in thanking you. God bless you, plus Desmond. How beautiful. And it's interesting that he mentions there that the book inspired him by looking at the people who struggled to, who inspired him in his struggle to open himself to the divine coming utterly and freely. And that comment of his made me realize now, or ask a question, what struck him in this book? And the penny dropped. That what is so common to many of the prayers and many of the people who composed them was the theme of total abandonment to God, total trust, total surrender. And that, as he puts it, struggling to open ourselves utterly and graciously and freely to the divine coming, to that final abandonment to God. Into your hands I commend my spirit. But I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. I mean, the one from Ignatius of Loyola, you know this one well. Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will. All I haven't called my own, you have given to me. To you, Lord, I return it. And then the prayer of little brother Charles de Foucault is the ultimate prayer of abandonment. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me whatever you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I'm ready for all. I accept all. And the prayer of Thomas More in the Tower of London, knowing that his head was to be chopped off. And his prayer too was a prayer of preparation to enable him to experience that total abandonment. And then the other three that I thought were quite significant, all beautiful prayers of abandonment, were the three Teresas. And the three Teresas, all of them Carmelites. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, known better as Edith Stein, who as a Jewish convert was arrested as a Jew and then marched off to Auschwitz, and there she was executed in the gas chambers. Lord, let me blindly follow your paths. I do not want to try to understand your ways. I am your daughter. You are the father of wisdom, who guide me through the night. Lift me up to you, Lord, that I might do your will. I am ready. And so she goes on with her prayer of abandonment. And the prayer of Teresa of Avila is also one of utter trust. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing dismay you. All things are passing. God never changes. Whoever lacks God has God, lacks nothing. And then the famous prayer of the little flower Teresa of Lisieux, I should know this off by heart. We used to have it at school. Oh my God, how does it go? I offer you all my prayers and works of this day for all the intentions and for your glory of the loving and sacred heart of Jesus. We used to remember, Roni, we used to blather that off at Loretta Convent in class. We had to do that prayer of abandonment, of surrender, of Teresa of Lisieux. And of course, the greatest prayer of abandonment is the prayer of Mary at the Annunciation. Fiat voluntas tuus, let it be done to me according to your word. And that in the very next page is picked up with a wonderful, wonderful paraphrase of the Magnificat by Olga Wonka, who is also a Loretto sister, a German sister, and it's translated. And here, my soul glorifies the Lord. He shatters my little world and lets me be poor before him. He takes from me all my plans and gives me more than I can hope for or ask. He gives me strength to be daring and to build on him alone. And so I thought, well, Desmond Tutu clearly picked up this central theme that I hadn't even alluded to when putting this book together, that so much of the spiritual life is practice, practice, practice in abandonment, in letting go, in surrender. Into your hands I commend my spirit. It also includes other themes, of course, and that's not the only one. A very contemporary one would be the whole environmental issue and how we have rediscovered in our own time Hildegard of Bingen and her amazing prayer of what page is now? Hildegard is on page 10. Yeah. Her amazing prayer called "O Greening Branch." I'm sure the Greens would be absolutely delighted with this, "O Greening Branch. You stand in all your nobility like the rising dawn. Rejoice now and exult and deign to free the fools we are from our long slavery to evil." And then she goes on to her beautiful reflections on creation and the cosmos. And Pope Benedict declared her a doctor of the church, and one of the patrons, along with Francis of Assisi, one of the patrons of environmentalism and ecology. So here we have these amazing saints. I have to be honest, relatively arbitrary. The choice of them is personal favorites of my own. And I'm sure every one of you has your own favorite as well. But I want to end by reading, or rather by praying with you, the magnificent prayer of Dag Hammarskjöld. And I think that he is also a person extremely relevant to our times as we go through amazing upheavals globally, internationally. He had been the Secretary General of the United Nations and was tragically killed in a plane crash. But in his book called Markings, he reveals very much of his private life. It was never meant to be published. He didn't write it for the public. It was like his journal, where he reveals his struggles of doubt, his struggles with faith, pride, the meaning of existence, loneliness, isolation, and the difficulties of his job. And when he was elected Secretary General of the UN, in his markings he wrote, "Not I, but God in me. Success for the glory of God or for your own, for the peace of humankind or for your own. Upon the answer to this question depends the result of all your actions." And so he learned in his capacity of UN Secretary General also to abandon himself in trust to God. And this prayer that he wrote is meant to be prayed slowly, reflectively, with pregnant pauses in each phrase. Have mercy upon us. Have mercy upon our efforts, that we, before thee, in love and in faith, righteousness and humility, may follow thee. With self-denial, steadfastness, and courage, and meet thee in the silence. Give us a pure heart, that we may see thee. A humble heart, that we may hear thee. A heart of love, that we may serve thee. A heart of faith, that we may live thee. Thou, whom I do not know, but whose I am, thou. So now I would like to hand over to Steve and Sue Doherty. Steve is responsible for all the DTP work on the books that I've produced, the desktop publishing, and many of the other books that have photos and graphics and imagery that he and Sue have worked on. But also, very significantly, and perhaps he and Sue can maybe show the cover of the book, or I can raise it as they're speaking, because the photograph on the front cover of the book was taken by Sue, and Sue is a photographer. And I know this front cover really inspired Roni in Bournemouth in England because of her love for trees. And as soon as I saw this photograph of a tree, I said, that's it. That's the front cover of the book. And I would describe Sue as a contemplative photographer. So I hope Sue will speak to us about her work and about this photograph of this tree, but also both of them as a married couple to respond in general to this book and to what we've been reflecting on. Over to you.
Thank you, Larry. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Okay. Of course, many of the people written about in this book are well known to a number of people, but a number of them are well known to me for a very special reason. And that is during my formation as a young Redemptorist studying for the priesthood, Larry was my student master and formation. And during this period in formation as in religious life, it was inevitable that some of the pearls of wisdom which he spoke and which he lived should find their way into my heart and into my life. And during this time as a religious, and even afterwards, many of Larry's favorites, the holy people that is written about in this book, still continue to inspire me. And among those who do stand out for me and who touched my heart were, of course, Alphonsus, the founder of the Redemptorists, Teresa of Avila, Thomas Merton, Thomas More, Oscar Romero, Therese of Lisieux. But there is one in particular that for me stands head and shoulders above the rest, and for me is a more recent favorite. And that is Etty Hillesum, a young Jewish woman who, despite her many struggles in life, came to know God in a very profound way. Now, inspired by this book, by Larry's book, a couple of years ago, I bought and read her full volume of her diaries and letters. I was, of course, blown away by the beautifully descriptive way in which she revealed the unveiling of her relationship with God and the landscape of her deep inner life. And to quote from the book, she says, "There is a deep well inside me. In it dwells God. Sometimes I am there too, but more often stones and grit block the well, and God is buried beneath. Then he must be dug out again." On a number of occasions while reading her diary and letters, I felt as though my heart would burst in my chest. And I'll even admit that I was brought to tears on numerous occasions while reading her writings, because they were so full of beauty and intimacy. Now, despite having to live through the extreme and harsh circumstances of concentration camp, she had the ability and freedom to give praise to God for the goodness and beauty of life. She didn't blame God for her and other people's suffering. Instead, she promised to take care of God and to guard that place in her where God dwells. She understood that God could do nothing about the suffering and the evil inflicted on them, so much so that she decides she will help God help her and others. And as frail as her own health was, she gave her all in helping those around her in the camp. Her spirituality was by no means one of contemplation only, but was coupled with action and was revealed in the way in which she helped, treated, and cared for anyone who needed help. In a profound way, she emulated another great saint that's written about in Larry's book, and that's Teresa of Avila, who said, "Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks with compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has no body now on earth but yours." Etty Hillesum wrote many prayers in her writings, but I want to conclude with the prayer which Larry wrote in her book. "I shall promise you one thing, God, just one very small thing. I shall never burden my today with cares about my tomorrow, although that takes some practice. Each day is sufficient unto itself. I shall try to help you, God, to stop my strength ebbing away, though I cannot vouch for it in advance. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear to me, that you cannot help us, that we must help ourselves. And that is all we can manage these days, and also all that really matters, that we safeguard that little piece of you, God, in ourselves, and perhaps in others as well. Alas, there doesn't seem to be much you yourself can do about our circumstances, about our lives, and neither do I hold you responsible. You cannot help us, but we must help you and defend your dwelling place inside us to the last. You are sure to go through lean times with me now and then when my faith weakens a little, but believe me, I shall always labor for you and remain faithful to you, and I shall never drive you from my presence. Larry beautifully encapsulates her life, as well as with all the other people in his book, in a beautiful and wonderful economy of words. His book introduces people who listened to their hearts. And if you do not have this book, I sincerely urge you to purchase it and to become inspired as I have done by it. Thank you. Over to you, Sue.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Larry. I wanted to mention about, as you mentioned about the cover, and what my favorite part of the book has been. The three favorite saints from the book have been Hildegard of Bingen for her wonderful greenness, Veritatis and greenness of creation. Teresa of Avila, surrendering to God, particularly the line, "Let this presence settle into your bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise, and love." And St. Francis of Assisi for his love for creation and his belief that every living soul is connected, human and nature. And it's in nature that I feel such a surrendering and a very closeness, real closeness to God. And it was during lockdown that I picked up the book again and read it. Having worked on it, I reread it, and I took it with me on my walks and in nature, because that's what kept me going during lockdown. And I found I started feeling much closer to God in nature. And I started doing contemplative photography during these walks into nature. That was my survival. And particularly the photograph of this tree on the cover has significant symbolism for me, in that it's a tree with all its leaves blown off, and it's bare and barren, and yet it has such beauty. And the barrenness of the tree, stripped with all its leaves, it shows its form and its structure and its beauty in the shape of it. And that often makes me think of our relationship with God in suffering. So, and that's what the symbolism of this tree has for me, and for the book, is that it's in our suffering, God strips us of many things, but that's where our true nature comes through, and where we see ourselves in that suffering, and God strengthens us. And it's in knowledge of God and knowledge of self that are intertwined during that suffering where we see God in all of nature. We do not see the life and the magnificence of the tree renewing itself beneath the surface. And that's like, very often, that's how God works within the suffering. And it bursts into new life in spring. And that's how God's love bursts forth in renewing my spirit, particularly in suffering. He's always there, carrying us, strengthening us from within, and he gives us courage to take one more step on our journey of life to recovery and wholeness. And for me, contemplative photography has become that way of growing ever closer to God within nature and being close to God within nature. And it's seeing God in all things and seeing nature through the eyes of God. And it's a lifelong journey of wholeness for me. And the prayers in this book have brought me ever closer through those walks within nature, particularly St. Francis of Assisi. His connection in nature is a very special one for me. So I urge you to delve into the book and take it along with you on a walk. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much again for that incredibly inspiring photograph of that tree, and the way you have drawn out its symbolism, both in terms of its being stripped at the autumn and winter, and then the greening of it afterwards as the spring comes. Thank you so much. Bonnie, over to you.
Wow. Thank you, Stephen and Sue. Your words have been so inspiring, and thank you for your suggestion, Sue, to take the book into nature. I'm definitely going to do that. But you've inspired me to say something else. It wasn't long ago that I read somewhere, and I don't know who wrote it, but somebody suggested we mustn't take a photograph because it's part of our consumer society. We must receive the photograph. And you're nodding your head, and I can see that you feel that it's a photograph is received as a gift. And it made me think, Sue, about Larry's written a book about people that lived a life and a prayer. But what about the current people now, like you, writing your life and a prayer through your photography? So I had made a few notes, but for me now that thought, that inspiration was the most important to say. So I'll leave the rest of what I was thinking, and I'm going to hand over to everybody else to see what they have to contribute now. Anyone who wants to talk, just unmute, chat, let it just happen, as if we were all together.
Needless to say, I've got something to say.
Okay.
You know, I must tell, it's one of my weird stories. I didn't know that Bonnie was going to do this talk, and just recently we'd had new carpeting put down, and in the books had to be moved, etc., etc., etc. And when Larry first sent me this book, I printed it out, and it's tattered and torn, and I really need a proper copy. However, I didn't have to go and look for it. It dumped itself on my table just this week and said, read me. And I picked it up again, which I haven't done for ages. And I think what's so brilliant about this book is that you can just, you know, open a page and find something. And that to me is what a book should be about, is literally just opening a page and going, wow, okay, I found a new message today. But Sue, I want to thank you for that original photograph. I remember Larry sending it to me and being absolutely over the moon that this was going to be the cover, on the cover. It was just this perfect tree. It was like, you know, it's you do get perfection, but often in nature there's a bit of something that's not right. But that tree just spoke to me from day one. So thank you for that. I really, really mean it. Because I'm huge, as Larry says, I'm a tree hugger. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I know. I really have to get a copy. Do you think they've got it here in Chawton?
I don't know. I think we did send it. I don't remember.
Don't worry, I will find out. I think I must do a thing on all your books. I took them all up to see Father Dennis the other day and said, now, have you seen this? And have you seen this? And he loved the children's stories. He was, I think we need to get some over here. Anyway,
yes.
Yeah. But
It's Janet here. I'll make sure I send you a copy of A Life and a Prayer.
no, but
I
I need.
address somewhere.
I know we're going to have to make a plan because there's A Life and a Prayer, and I also so badly want the other one, which they have got. And I actually went to Chawton the other day, but wasn't allowed to go into the the publication house
Oh,
because
shame.
they're still in COVID lockdown. So I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, no. Well, I'll definitely make sure I get a copy to you.
Oh, you're such a darling. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Chawton is Redemptress Publications in the United Kingdom. They are our sister publisher. They send us a huge amount of their stuff and we promote it and market it. But when we send our stuff to them, it just disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So now, unfortunately, they're going to regret the day that Richard came to stay because now I've got a foot in the door. So I'm kind of starting to say, no, but what about Larry's books now?
Right.
But you can be our promoter over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have I seen anybody else's hand up there yet who wants to contribute? I liked what Stephen said about Larry's economy of words.
Mm.
Brenda, are you going to say something?
Yes, I always appreciate these Coffee with God sessions. I find them so inspiring. And a question for Sue. I also found the cover so striking when it popped up in my inbox. I also looked at it and was quite taken with the cover. I love trees as well. I find them so stately. And so this tree in this picture is wonderful. Can I ask where the tree actually is?
Yes, it was taken in Papkaalsfontein. That's up towards Northern Cape.
Okay.
The Doe Valley, yes, Papkaalsfontein and Bedo Valley.
And was the sky actually like that at the time?
The clouds were like that. And the original photograph was in black and white. It was in color. And then I turned it into black and white and with a sepia. And but the clouds, yes, were so striking, and it was just such a peaceful environment where it was taken. I sat there for ages, just walking and staring and in contemplation. So it definitely has symbolic meaning. Yeah.
Well, it's stunning. When I looked at it, you know, in this today's age, I'm like, oh, is this real? Has it been touched up? Has this guy been added in? It's just so striking. And then to think, if that is the picture you saw, it's a real gift, a total gift. And for you to have captured it the way you have is just beautiful. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I have never thought of taking a book of prayers with me on walks in nature. So this is definitely a book I'm interested in getting. Larry, thanks for compiling one of all the saints of past. And it's definitely a book that just hearing you speak about has drawn me in.
Mm.
Anyone else who's got a hand up? Somebody else that I really like in the book is Teilhard Chardin.
Oh,
And I'm
exactly.
also, like you, Stephen, was inspired to read more about Etty. I want to get hold of Teilhard's books. Yeah, read more about him.
I want to say something now, not as the writer, but as someone who hasn't picked this book up for 6 years when I wrote it 6 years ago. And I picked it up this time, not as the writer of the book, but as a new reader. And this is the most narcissistic thing I'm going to say, but I was incredibly inspired by it. But I'm saying that as a reader, not as the writer, and not so much my little introductory comments, but inspired by the persons that are shared in this book, and inspired by their prayers that are so profound. So so I'm also going to take this book on walks. It's small, it's very light, and I'm going on retreat this next week, and so I'm going to be taking this book with me again.
Well, I fortunately have them all on my Kindle, so they can go anywhere with me.
Yes.
That's one
useful.
fortunate thing I do have. I know I want the original, I want a proper book, but I do have them on my Kindle, and that's pretty fantastic for me, is that I can just open a Kindle page or whatever. So
Another thing that I found really beautiful is the respect that a lot of the people Larry's mentioned in the book, the respect that they have for the earth.
yes.
And how we can be influenced by their respect for the earth.
Mm.
And that ties in with the front cover photo again.
Exactly. Did you do that subconsciously, or?
No, I don't know.
Actually, I remember when Larry had finished writing the book and he was looking for a cover for the book. I remember so clearly. I think you were with me on the game reserve, Larry. And when the book we'd finished the book, and you kept going back to Sue's photograph, kept going back to it until you said, "This is it. This is what I want to use."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was, well, actually, I saw it visiting Sue and Steve at their home. I saw it there, that in her home. So I saw the original Beautiful.
Wow.
I love Saint Francis of Assisi, the Canticle of Brother Sun. The first time I ever heard that was when I was at school at the convent, and so rereading this book through COVID and on my walks, it was a mini retreat for me every time I went out with it. And Brother Sun, for me, encapsulates that wonderful, as you said, Bonnie, that respect for nature. And what I found is almost falling in love with nature all over again. And I think the more that closeness in nature and the closeness with God that I would find just sitting quietly reading and within nature, it just rekindled such a respect for nature. And I think it's so important during this time now. So Larry, I thank you for this book over and over, because it's played such a special part during this last 18 months of lockdown. So thank you.
Actually, when you read Francis of Assisi, he's almost ahead of his time, isn't he? The way he writes. I mean, he's not a. I mean, if you look at the Brother Sun and the Brother Fire and the Sister Bodily
And
Death,
Sister Moon.
you know, there's some pretty extraordinary words in here, and Brother Wind. So what's fascinating is how he's made wind a male, and it is in a way, fire's male. But then you've got the moon and the stars, and they become sisters, and it's an extraordinary piece of work, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
It's one that you need to kind of keep very much in your focus.
Yes.
For
Beautiful
its
imagery.
yeah. I'm afraid he is my favorite.
That's true. I mean, it's here, this Brother Sun and Sister Moon, and of course the opening lines of the Canticle of Creation are, praised be, Laudato Si, praise be to you, Lord God of the universe, of all creation, praise be, Laudato Si, for Brother Sun and Sister Moon. And so Pope Francis' first encyclical is called Laudato Si, where he quotes from St. Francis of Assisi, and totally inspired by Francis of Assisi. This is probably the most prophetic encyclical that has been produced. And it has influenced so much, even the meetings now on meetings of countries and discussing the environmental crisis, but how well known this encyclical is in the wider world. It's not just a Catholic thing. It is incredibly prophetic for our times. And so Francis of Assisi is the inspiration of the encyclical Laudato Si, on the care for our common home is the subtitle. Now, the latest encyclical of Francis, Fratelli Tutti, Brothers and Sisters All, is his urging us in an interfaith way to get together with people, and he shows how his friendship with the Muslim Imam of Cairo, and how we've got to work at so many ways in which together we must recognize we are all brothers and sisters. And Francis of Assisi didn't just apply brother and sister titles to creation, but to all of humanity, and especially to the poor, the poorest of the poor, as our sisters and brothers. And so I I actually wanted to end before we hand over to Janet to do a little bit of a marketing thing for us about some other books that we want to put together with this book. But I wanted to end with the closing words of Francis in his encyclical Brothers and Sisters All, because it ties in with my opening words about Desmond Tutu and his letter to me about this book. And the closing words of Francis in Fratelli Tutti are, in these pages of reflection on universal brotherhood and sisterhood, I felt inspired particularly by Saint Francis of Assisi, but also by others of our brothers and sisters who are not Catholics. Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, Mahatma Gandhi, and many more. And isn't that amazing? Because that's in our this Sunday's Catholic link is for all the Feast of All Saints, and this quote will appear in the Catholic link this Sunday. And Stephen, who does the layout, has done a beautiful graphic of Francis of Assisi in the middle, with Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, and Charles de Foucauld, who is also mentioned in the next paragraph of Francis's encyclical on universal brotherhood and sisterhood. So it's wonderful that he quotes a South African, and among all the saints that he quotes, Tutu is still alive.
Yeah.
The rest are all gone before us, and we'll be thinking of All Saints on Sunday on the feast. But Janet, can I ask you to, because I've forgotten what we had discussed, can I ask you just to explain a little bit about how, if we put this book together with two others, there'll be a massive discount?
Yeah, so we've got A Life and a Prayer, which is what we've just spoken about. Praying the Holy Spirit, which Larry also put together for us. It's a novena booklet, and then it's got some other prayers which are also very good, Sue, for taking on your walks and things with you. This one, and then the little Beauty of the Rosary, which is really a pocket book, which is always wonderful to ponder upon and pray upon. So for the three, we're offering them at 160 Rand, including delivery, anywhere in South Africa. So basically you're getting the delivery free, really, on the special. And then I've put up in the chat where you can order from. If anybody wants to get A Life and a Prayer on its own, it's 50 Rand, and then it will be 60 Rand for delivery. So, yeah. But you all can feel free to contact me on the email address orders@rpp.org.za, and I'll respond to anything that you want to know. Thank you.
Is this very
sad?
Is this very cheap?
Very sad that sometimes the postage is more expensive than the book. But this is just the name of the game today. We can't trust the South African Post Office at all, and so we have to rely on other alternatives, which is usually courier of some kind. So while the book might be 50 Rand, the postage is 60. Just too bad.
Sorry about that.
I was wondering
really,
if I should...
So Janet, what you're saying is the 3 books for 100 Rand.
Yes.
Plus postage.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's
That's fantastic.
That is a huge discount. Yeah.
It's a real bargain. Sure.
I think I'll buy some and take them up to the to Father Bredinus and say, "Would you like to read it?"
We
Yeah.
never really get any response from them.
I know. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I've got, as I say, Janet, I've got my foot in the door now.
Well, maybe what I should do is put a whole little bundle together for you. And if you're going,
Yeah.
up there, I'll just put them, seeing I'm sending you one a month.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Because
Thanks, Rose.
that way I can actually, and as I say, what I'm trying to do is get my, to really start pushing them from this side. Because I just think that they're extraordinary books and they shouldn't be collecting dust in some little corner somewhere.
In South Africa, or in our little corner of the world.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
in return, what I might do then is get some of his books. I don't know if you've got any of his books.
We have.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do have
Oh, you
some.
do? Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's a prolific writer and
Yes.
I know.
And he is well liked here in South Africa as well.
I'll phone him and tell him, and he will be absolutely delighted to hear it.
But
And maybe I'll get even more.
Maybe we can invite him on a coffee with God next
You
year.
know what? I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Great
Talk
idea.
about it after
I think
the
that's one of the
coffee.
best ideas ever. Seriously.
Okay.
let's just check what of his we have in stock at the moment, because we haven't been able to order any books for the whole of lockdown, basically.
Oh, God. Okay.
So let me check and I'll get back to you on
Will
one of
you?
them.
Have you got my email? I'll send you my email address.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I think I do have it, but please send it again.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Little bit of marketing, yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. And again, thank you to my brother Larry for doing another
Yeah.
Coffee with God. And thank you so much, Stephen and Sue, for joining.
Yes.
Today it's been really lovely, and I'm going to read the book again. And this time, Sue, I'm taking it with me down to the beach, and I'm going to walk on the beach and watch and read the book. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Larry. And our next one is probably on the 4th of December. I'll let you all know. Thanks,
Great.
everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
Bless. Bye all. Thanks to you all.
Thanks so much.
Bye.